So I'd encourage you to watch this because our anxiety as parents and our control issues cause the exact opposite response that we're looking for. We want them to move more quickly, they go more slowly. Think about this. You know how when you really care about something, like something's really important to you, like doing well in school, studying out of school, for some, your faith, and you want your kids just to follow in your faith, and you want it so bad, and the more you care about it, it seems like the more they resist. Notice that. For two reasons. One is this. Because I care, I want you to study, I want you to do so well. It places so much pressure, sometimes your kids, I can't live up to your standards. And then also, see if this makes sense. Sometimes, especially your strong-willed kids, they want to own it. And see, if I'm on you all the time and I'm doing it, I'm on you all the time, and you become successful at it, well, you're successful because I was on you all the time. So you didn't really own it. So that's why this stepping back thing is so important, because I want to give you space. I want to teach you. I want to model it for you. And we'll talk about giving you tools to succeed. But I need to step back a little bit so that when you are successful, well, you own it. And it's your faith. It's your success in school. It's you did it instead of me just always on you. Does that make sense? So I encourage you to watch a few things for anxiety. Watch comparing your kids to their siblings and peers. Because your strong-willed kids, for the most part, aren't going to measure up. Because some of your kids, they just struggle a little bit. My best advice is this. Make sure your best friend has kids that are way worse than yours. Right? Because then at least you can say, like, man, our son has some issues. They're just going to jail. Right? Now watch projecting into the future. This is important. How many of you have, in particular, say, a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old boy? Any of you have kind of teenage boys? Okay. As a whole, if you're a good parent, as a whole, here's what you think about that child. He is lazy and undisciplined. Because that's what they tend to be at that age. There are very few middle school age boys that are coming home from school saying, Mom, Dad, listen, I've got a vision for my life. I'd like some extra homework and some extra chores because I want to learn how to be responsible. And what happens is we project in the future and think, this 14-year-old blob of a child who lays on the sofa and plays video games, he's going to be like that when he's 22 and 28 and 30. He's going to be living in my basement until he's 29. And so we get on them. Let me show you a different way to handle that. One of my favorite ways to deal with our anxiety as parents and control issues is to do the opposite of what our anxiety is compelling us to do. So our anxiety compels us to lecture, get on. Try this with, but I'm going to use an example, it's just top of mind of like a 13, 14-year-old girl, right? So here's one of my triggers with kids. And I like to identify my triggers. What irritates me about my kids? What irritates me in life? So that I can develop a different response to that. Because if I go through life saying, well, if my kids, if my spouse, if society would just do X, then I'd be happy, everything would be better. It makes me a victim because I'm dependent on what someone else does. So I go to, next time that happens, here's how I'm going to handle it. So let me use an example. I hope it's okay. Say a 14-year-old girl. She comes walking into the living room, and I don't know if your kids are like this, but 14-year-old girls like on her little phone and stuff, right? You're like, right? You want to see? When I was a kid, I was outside playing. I had real friends, right? And they don't care. So I look at my daughter. If you don't mind, give me a good common name that's easy to pronounce for me, because I'm not really good, because I met kids last night and I flubbed their words. Sarah? Sarah? Mm-hmm. Or Nora? Yeah. Sarah, I can do Sarah. Thank you. 4 letters on it. So I say, so she comes in the living room, and instead of just reacting out of my anxiety to, why can't you join me? Sarah, you know what I was thinking about today? You have all these gifts. Like one of your gifts is pushing people's buttons. And I mean that in a positive way because it tells me you understand human nature. Because you know how to push my buttons, your mother's buttons, your brother's buttons without even trying. Do your kids do, any of your kids do this? Say when you have like family get-togethers. Any of your kids make inappropriate jokes about their relatives, right? But they're really spot on and they're funny and you have to laugh even though they're inappropriate. Okay, that tells me you get human nature. You know what else I know? You've got a big heart because when we see homeless people downtown, you always want to come home and sell your brother's toys on eBay to give to those homeless people. You're really good with other people's money. You know what else I know about you is this. I need to apologize because out of my own anxiety, I've labeled you pig-headed and obstinate. But you know what it really is? It's persistence. Because when you want something in life, nothing holds you back. Now, not doing chores or homework or anything I want you to do, but watch, a Harvard study showed the #1 quality necessary for success in life is not just good grades or good behavior, persistence. And you've got it. You know what else I know about you? You've got a gift with little kids, with animals. How many of you have kids who are great with younger kids? Not siblings, they don't count as people. But with little kids, right? Or animals. You know what I see in your future, honey? You put all these gifts together, that insight into human nature, that persistence, that big heart of yours. You could be a teacher one day, a child psychiatrist. You could own your own daycare center. Because God knows nobody's ever going to hire you. You're going to have your own business. So honey, you know what? I have seen your future. It's a good one. I can't wait to see it. And I walk out of the room. And watch what I've done. Instead of reacting to who she is in the moment, I'm just honest. She's just a defiant little snot that makes my life difficult. Right? That's what I think sometimes. Instead, I've created a vision of who she can be. And I do that with my sons. Because I don't know what you're going, how old are you? 12. 12 is a tough age, right? And so I like to see what's inside of him. Here's a few things I see inside of you. One, you're sitting here, okay, which tells me a lot because it's Saturday morning parenting workshop. I'm sure you weren't like, Dad, can we go to the parenting workshop? This would be awesome. But you're not sitting there like, this is stupid, when do we get to go? Okay, inside you may be saying that, but now we're like, yes, you're persistent. And you know what? You're giving me eye contact. Very few 12-year-old boys will give an adult eye contact. Do you know what the stock market is? Okay, kind of. Your parents will explain. So here's what I know about you. If you were a stock, I would buy a lot of you. I would. Because you're a good investment. Because one day you're going to do really great things. I know that. I can see that. Now, in the near term, short term, a little bit rocky. Okay, I may lose a little bit of value. But I'm going to hold you for the long term. You're a good investment. And so you start speaking to your kids and watch. Here's what I'm saying as the adult. I have the wisdom, the maturity, and the perspective to look beyond just what I see in the moment, to look into the future. And I create a vision of who he can be. Because every time I tell him, I go, you're persistent. See, every time he's a little bit obstinate, it clicks, yeah, that's persistence. Well, one day I'm going to use that. Yeah, a gift I have with little kids, because some of your kids are great with younger kids. And every time they're around little kids, they'll feel that gift in them draw them, and it draws out of them, and it feels good, and they know, I've got a future, I can do that. And that begins to change them more than the lecture. Does that make sense? So, let me wrap it up this way. Oh, one more. How many of you have toddlers? I've got to do this one. Okay, some of you have a strong-willed toddler, you're going to get a call from the preschool, and they're going to say this. Your daughter can't sit still in circle time. Maybe you get that? Right? What are we going to do? We're going to have to save for bail or college. Did we do something wrong? We're going to have to put her on medication. Listen, no offense to the teachers or anyone here. I don't like circle time. I think circle time is stupid. Here's why. Because after you're 5, you never have to sit still in a circle. Listen, nobody at your job on Monday is going to say, listen, Frank, 3 o'clock in the conference room, circle time. Okay, it's just not going to happen. So, and I encourage you to watch, in our society and schools, a lot of times we create artificial standards, artificial, arbitrary standards, against which we judge our kids. Now listen, do I want a 5-year-old running all over the class? No. But if she can't sit perfectly still for 45 minutes listening to an adult talk about boring things, I'm not going to label her for her whole future for this. I'll give you an example. So I've got this, working with this family in Boston. We were there 3 weeks ago. Little boy in 1st grade is getting labeled as defiant, and we'll do defiance later. But here's what's happening in 1st grade. Very bright kid, like many of your kids, right? Your kids are bright and they get bored. The teacher says this, class, place your folder flat on the desk. Well, that's too easy. You ever hear this from your kids? Duh, boring. Okay. So, little guy places his folder like this. How many of you have kids who would do that? Okay. Shouldn't you just follow simply? So, is he being a little defiant toward that teacher? There's a little bit of defiance there. There's a little bit of tweaking. Watch. 2 different responses to the same child. Same teacher can look at him and say, you know what? Why can't you follow simple directions? All I asked you to do is place your folder flat on the desk, and if you're not going to do what I told you to do, I'm going to take away recess. I will tell your parents that you're a bad kid, they will take away your video games, and there's this negative cycle of failure. But that same teacher could just as easily have said this, man, Omar, you know what I see in you? You know why I'm glad you're in my class? Because you're really bright. And when you put your folder up like that, here's what it tells me. You see really well in 3 dimensions. Probably very good spatial relations. I bet you're good at building with Legos. Future engineer, future architect. You know what else it tells me? You're probably very good at arguing with your parents. Same part of the brain, responsible for building with Legos, chess checkers, arguing. Same part of the brain. Future attorney one day. We don't need any more of those, but it's an option for you. You know what else I like about you? You're not afraid to be a little bit different. That tells me you've got leadership traits. I could use that in my class. So, every day when you walk through my classroom, I'm going to challenge myself to make things a little bit more of a challenge for you, to make it difficult, because I believe that you can do it. I'm so glad you're in my class. Now watch. Same kid, same adult, 2 different ways of looking at that child. And some of your kids, they go down that first path. Negative, negative, negative. And what they internalize is, people believe the worst about me, and inside, here's what they say. If you think I'm being defiant in 1st grade, you wait till I get to middle school. Right? Because once everybody starts believing the worst about you, you start to live up, down to that. But the second option, I start to, and here's where we're going to start talking about your kids. Instead of just reacting to the outward behavior, I start to look inward, and I start to see that sitting things up. What does that tell me about how your brain works? And I start to take what's in there, and I start to channel it and use it in positive ways, instead of just this all the time. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, let me close up this first part this way. I would encourage you for the next 3 days, next 30 days, next 30 years of your life. Focus on your own control issues, get control of that anxiety. Really work on yourself. I am ruthless with myself. I give myself lots of grace and mercy and patience, but I'm ruthlessly honest with myself and saying, no, that last power struggle didn't have much to do with him. It's my own anxiety. Because I'm really nervous about something's going on. Because when I control myself, all the interactions with other people begin to change. I'll give you a good example. One more, and then we'll talk about your kids. So this is me. I used to go, when I was going to the grocery store. So I go to the grocery store, I pull into a parking spot real fast to beat that old lady to the closer spot, right? Or I take the spot for like moms with young children and act like I have like a kid on my back, so I could save 5 steps. And I go through and I'm shopping, right? And I get to the checkout counter, and now what? I get the slow cashier, right? And so here's what was always in my brain. And I'm tapping my feet, standing like this. Doesn't everybody else know I've got an agenda? I've got an important, busy day. Why are they so slow? And now the lady in front of me wants to use exact change to pay for a grocery. It's irritating. Like, lady, just use your debit card, all right? Here's my debit card. Just move, 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 move. And now when I get up to the cashier, and this is just me, I used to punish her. Passive aggressive. So she'd say, how are you today, sir? Fine. See, I'm going to punish her because she's slow. She's taking up my valuable time. She costs me 3 minutes of my life. Right? And now the whole time, I'm just kind of dismissive toward her. And I miss an opportunity because now that I realize that my anxiety is the issue, when I'm standing in the line there, I do a couple things, again, opposite. When I go to the post office, because I don't like going to the post office, it's irritating. Because I know they're highly efficient, but they just irritate me. Instead of standing there like, you know what, I paid enough in tax dollars, they should have more paperwork. I allow one person, I open the front door and I allow someone to go ahead of me. Now just one person. I'm not that giving, but one person. Okay. Now I've just made someone else's day. Now we're having a conversation in line. And now it's not all about my anxiety. It changes something. So now when I'm in a grocery store and someone has a few items, I can allow, you know what, why don't you go ahead? You have 6 items, go ahead. Really, is that, because I made someone else's day. Now when I get up to the cashier, I can say, hey, you having a rough day? And now I've kind of made her day instead of punished her just because she's slow. Does that make sense? My anxiety. Okay, let's talk about your kids now. So that chart, if you don't mind, open up your